Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome you today on behalf of ICMCI, and thank you for investing your time with us. I'm Gergana Mantarkova, a board member, and I believe that building a better future begins with young people. So ICMCI launched the Future Leaders Forum as part of our Future of Management Consultancy initiative in November 2021 to huge success. We brought together many young consulting leaders from around the globe and engaged them in different ways in the conversation about developing the profession. So today they will take us on a time travel into the future and share their views about what would management consulting be like in 10 years from now. The event will feature a panel discussion in 2 editions. The present one is with guest speakers from Asia and Europe, and later on we will have an event with guest speakers from the Americas. So allow me to proudly present the panel and pass the floor to Cassandra Corbet, who has kindly agreed to moderate this session. So let's go, Cassandra.
Thanks very much, Gergana, and you might not be able to see it through the camera, but I'm blushing a little bit at being called young because I think I'm probably the most senior of the panelists that are joining the call today. But to your point about kind of building that view of what consulting is going to look like in the future, it's important to kind of understand a little bit about what consulting looks like now and what consulting looked like previously as well. And as I'm sure everybody on this call knows, and everybody that might be listening back to this recording, consultancy is not something that has been born out of the last 10 years or even the last 20 years. There have been consultants and advisors that are dating back to the age of kind of global monarchies, for example, strategic consultants that would have gone into battle alongside, great generals throughout time. And then as we come into the era of industrialization and, huge entrepreneurship, we find ourselves kind of supported by consultants from backgrounds in accountancy, backgrounds in strategy, and that continue to develop and evolve over the years. We now see consultants that are providing services around digitization and environmental sustainability, societal impact, and that's where we find ourselves today. And what I'm hoping this group will be able to bring us through is starting to kind of piece together what that picture is going to look like in the next phase of the evolution of this industry. So to begin with, I'd like all of the panelists to introduce themselves. So if you could give us your name, the organization and role that you work in, and maybe just to begin with, your go-to consultancy tool. So I'll start out. My name is Cassandra Corbet. I work for Novartis Pharmaceuticals in their internal consulting wing. We do global change and transformation projects throughout all of our different locations globally. And for me, my go-to consulting tool is a virtual or physical whiteboard. I love a good ideation session where people come in and we try to think through ideas to try to solve problems. I'll go to Sam next, just because you're sitting next to me virtually on the screen.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Sam from Singapore. I represent Palo, a CFO advisory firm based out of Singapore. And my go-to consulting tool is quite similar to Cassandra. Is this app on my Apple Pad, my iPad itself that forms as my virtual whiteboard. And on Zoom itself, I can share my screen using that, and it works like a paper. So that was what my go-to was over the last 3 years in the COVID period.
Thanks very much, Sam. Christina, you're sitting next to myself and Stam.
Hi. Hi, my name is Christina. I'm part of the Impetus Capital team as an investment associate. We are an alternative investment manager, a fancier way of saying that we manage venture capital funds. We're based in Sofia. We invest in early stage companies, post-traction that bring innovation to the table with strong founding team, double-digit annual growth, and with a Bulgarian angle. Our fund is a bit different in the sense that we take a very active operational support with our founders And, one of my favorite tools I use when, let's say, we've just invested in a company is sitting down for a strategic meeting and mapping out, the priority of their initiatives. What are some quick wins that we can implement with the limited resources that a starting company has, and we go from there.
Thanks very much, Christina. And if we could go to Mahdi next.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mahdi from Iran. And actually, I'm working with platform ecosystems and innovation management. I prefer to work as a freelance, but now I work with Iranian Innovation Association, and in the Innovation Committee, I'm interested in platforms, mostly innovation platforms like game consoles or sharing entertainment. So I believe those sectors can be game changers in near future, and I hope I can share my mind with you during this meeting, and I'm happy to see you all.
Thanks very much, Mahdi. And lastly, Siranuysh.
Hello, I'm Siranuysh Gyurjinyan. I'm from Armenia. I'm a business management and communication marketing consultant. Currently, I have founded my consulting company, working with different organizations. As a key expert, I'm involved in EU delegation, Armenia, general communication development, and there are many projects I'm involved in. I highly appreciate startup ecosystem. I would love working with startups, consulting them, and I have founded also my startup, burnout prevention platform. That was crucial and important also for us consultants. For me, the tools are Miro, the project management tools, as I love to strategize. As Cassandra said, we consultants love to strategize much more. And as my son says, the Miro is unlimited space for imagination, for creativity, and when strategizing, we can use it widely. There are many project management tools we are using, and I think in future there will be much more. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Siranuysh, and thanks very much, everybody, for those insights into what you're doing now. I think what that has given maybe a great kind of basis for our conversation is the diversity that exists in what the current value proposition is for the consultant. So what I'd like to do now is just start out with getting some insights from you as, when you think of your value proposition today, in your role versus my role, versus Sam's role or Mahdi's role, could you tell us what you think that value proposition is going to evolve to when we think of how business is changing, how their focus is changing, and the type of advisory that they're going to need and the value that consultants will have? And I'll start with you, Siranuysh, because you were the last to introduce yourself.
For me, business consultancy is changing due to the customers and customer transformation. Due to even the toolbox of our consultants, we are problem solvers. We're going to be problem solvers in future as well in 10 years, but we're going to solve different problems for different people, for different consumers and customers. As an external proposition, we'll provide different views, a third-party approach anyway. But our customers will transform, the businesses will transform. If you, in 10 years, due to stats, we're going to have more 60+ year-old customers and businesses. And this means that this is another segment to work with. This is another mindset. These are the people who used to work when there was no internet. So their mindset is different from Gen Zs who are going to be 30 years old managers and executives in 10 years. but we need to adapt, we need to work and with all of them. And this is a kind of challenge for all of us, but it's, I think it's amazing to have this kind of challenges. We consultants love to scale up, upgrade and update our mindset. And I think this is going to be a great experience for all of us in future.
Thanks very much for that, Siranuysh. And Sam and Mahdi and Christina, just when you think about maybe that gap or that huge swing in generational experience between the customer of the future versus the consultancy provider of the future, and how they're going to come together to support each other, to add value to each other's propositions and businesses. What are we going to be able to bring to that to help bridge that? And Sam, I might start with you and then go to Mahdi, just because I know from a digital perspective and an innovation perspective, those are going to be two very key things.
I think I kind of agree in a certain sense that, there are different, target audience, different groups, different expectations when it comes to information flow. For sure, technology does change a couple of things in what we have. But if you go back to the principle of the role of a consultant, I usually say that the role of a consultant is not to be a business owner and know the business like who you're advising. You're there to structure, you're there to facilitate for sure. But it's just the mode of it being done is a little bit different. So if you look at it from perspective standpoint, what's consultancy? Consultancy is about talent. Consultancy is about the knowledge management there are. And the consultancy is all about, I think at the end of the day, it's also the ability to see a certain results or certain recommendation. So, on that point itself, I think expectation and value proposition might be a little bit different. So in the past, talent is just people, localized, but nowadays with the whole trend of digital nomads, and you can just work from anywhere in the world. So talent pool is no longer just, specific to local, but it can go beyond. And that's where the ease of doing, getting talent and getting knowledge bank becomes even more easy. Of course, the other part of it is knowledge. Big consultancy firms tend to have their own localized knowledge, and people are paying for that historically for that. But I think what have changed is, of course, we talk about internet. Knowledge is everywhere, more information out there. But what have changed partially is because of tools we have. We talked about tools right earlier on as well. The kind of AI that can do, the dashboards that we have, it allows us to take more data into consideration rather than sample size. And that means that expectation will increase a lot more in terms of the kind of insights and the data that you share. And finally, I would say in the past, clients tend to be expecting just recommendation. What usually the consultancy firms like to say, point 1, point 2, point 3, this is a recommendation, hand it over to you and you implement. But I think that's a growing shift away from that. And the growing shift that I see is a lot more results focused. Big consulting firms are going to solutions, which means directly resulting it rather than just, selling time. You see a lot more expectation from someone to bring from 0 to 1, end to end, to eventually see the results. And technology does shorten that whole chain, because what happens is with a shorter chain, you can see results faster compared to last time. And that's also one of the reasons why that is that. So I think value proposition, linking back to value proposition itself, expectation changes. The younger generation tends to want everything fast. And hence, with that in mind, there's a changing expectation in terms of the results. But of course, the good thing is we have talent all over, as you can see from Zoom now. We connect everyone just over a call over 1 hour. That makes it a lot easier as well. I think that is the broader trend that I'm seeing with technology and the value proposition that someone is looking for.
Thanks very much, Sam. And it's interesting what you said there, that there's this focus now on results. So, the consultancy sometimes is viewed as, the PowerPoint generation, and we generate PowerPoints to beat the band. And, that's what we do. We come in, we take a look around, we deliver a PowerPoint presentation, and then that's it, that's job done then. But now there's this expectation that we're going to be there for implementation, that we're going to be able to stand over the recommendations and really kind of put our money where our mouths are, walk the walk, not just talk the talk in the boardroom. Mahdi, I wouldn't mind going to you now next, just with regards to how we build innovation into that. So beyond kind of the digital technologies that we're looking at, how can we be innovative in the way, or how do we need to be innovative in the way that we're kind of presenting back to our clients, the way that we're creating solutions in the first place? Because the solutions don't seem to be as, they just seem to be far more dynamic than what I certainly had at the beginning of my consultancy career in comparison to what I have to deliver now?
Actually, when I was thinking about the challenges and the innovative solutions to the challenges and new technologies, new businesses, I think we have a tendency to think that there is a better technology in future. And of course, it's true that, but we should know that there are two parts that we should consider when we think about future. When we think about challenges, innovation and challenges are two parts that we should consider. But in each side, in each part, we have two kinds of, for instance, innovation, incremental innovation, which means that we have better technologies every day. We can calculate data, analyze data faster with lower cost, and of course, we can satisfy our customer better. And the other part is disruptive innovation, which we cannot predict from now. Even in next year, we will have some new technologies, which is unprecedented. So I believe the way that innovation can help consulting industry is that trend better new technology will companies face when we see them absorb some new technologies which they didn't know even in startups and universities, research centers. There weren't any single sign of new technologies, but when you find out that your competitors have that, you should understand that you may have a challenge and you find a strategy, correct strategy to face the challenge to stay in the game. So I believe industries will change toward technologies, toward the industry cloud platforms and tighter networks all over the world. We will have a better globalization in industries, but the thing that concept, the problem that we want to face, we want to share our mind about is that what should we do about that? So I believe if we focus on data analysis, on using artificial intelligence in our businesses, it's great, it's awesome, but it cannot satisfy, it cannot answer all the problems. So I believe we want to meet our client, we want to find out what looks like the future generation. So we should contribute to younger generations. We should have them in our businesses, in our companies to have a better understanding of next generations and invest on a startup to find out what can we have in our toolbox to answer all new challenges, to have it, ace in our hands to meet the customer needs. So, and about the challenges, I believe there were just similar as innovations, like we have incremental innovation and disruptive innovation. We have challenges like global warming, energy crisis, but we have unprecedented challenges like, coronavirus pandemic and research centers and close communication between consulting firms and R&D centers can provide a good opportunity for us and for our customers to answer the crisis faster, better, and with more feasible solution. I think it can be a good foresight for all of us to consider our future and our next step.
Thanks very much for that, Mahdi. And there's a couple of things that I want to pick up there just after I go to Christina, because I'm intrigued to understand from a trend perspective, what are, you're talking about the venture capital space. Are you seeing that same shift in how people want to invest their money, how people want to be, the type of advice that needs to go into how you're investing your money. Is that matching this viewpoint of, we understand that there's an evolving customer base, but we also understand that there's an evolving, I suppose, provider base as well in terms of the younger generation that's going to be coming in? Are you seeing kind of trends in, I suppose, maybe the push and pull between, overly relying on digital and AI and tools like that versus needing to really be responsive and understand the maybe the people innovation that needs to come into the thinking, especially when you're dealing with the curveballs that all of our industries have been thrown over the last couple of years between, global warming and global kind of pandemics that, could have shut things down, but it was more people innovation that kept things moving forward. So, Christina, if you could come in on that would be great.
Yeah, so what we've seen specifically with all of the AI solutions, especially deep tech, that's come in the last couple of years, even 10 years, is that these require extreme investments in order to reach a sustainable point. And currently investors are a bit more hesitant when investing in AI companies, while 5 years ago, each company that claimed to in any capability provide an AI solution was getting funded. So all of those companies are currently, well, not all of them, but a lot of them are struggling to survive because their value proposition is harder to sell to today's clients. Some of them are, before they've already entered a market which is not ready for their product. And yes, their product might be standard in 2032, but not today. And so that makes it hard for such companies to continue to exist, and investors are rather pulling out. What we've seen is a shift towards solutions that are very easily implementable for clients, that create great value, but don't require a 2-year lead cycle for it to be implemented, tested, and a POC, etc. And in that sense, I have seen a shift.
Thanks, Christina. I think you've made me feel a little bit more comfortable that the technology is not going to, in fact, take all of our jobs in consultancy. So that's great to know. But it would be interesting even to get yours and the rest of the panel's views as to how do we then, as consultants, partner with the technology to help to kind of reduce down that lead time to ensure that in 2032, these businesses can in fact be successful, but they can be successful because they're partnered with, the people innovation, the I suppose the historical understanding that, the people on this panel, the people that are joining us today and listening back to the recording, are able to bring to the table, so that it's not a case of one or the other, but kind of a partnership or a marriage between the two.
Yeah, I can take a little bit on that. I am a bit biased, being myself part of an investment fund, but what I feel, management consultants of tomorrow should definitely invest their time into is building, just as Mahdi and Siranuysh have done, building relationships, taking part into, the startup communities of their locale, because those companies that are just now starting out, no matter their industry, tech is a very, very large definition. It doesn't necessarily need to be AI, but being able to see how the business models of tomorrow can be implemented in our big player clients is key, and I feel this is what will bring the most value in 10 years from now, because business models are changing now more than ever and much faster. And so being able to extrapolate and pull from your resources, from your network, creating meaningful connections between clients, implementing meaningful solutions that fill gaps that large players so far have not been able to fill for clients, it will be key for our profession, I feel.
Thanks very much for that, Christina. Siranuysh, you were smiling quite a lot while I was talking about kind of the marriage between, I suppose, the people innovation and the technology and that. So if you'd like to come in, that would be great.
Yes, sure. First of all, today's generation has no time, cannot afford wasting time on junior talent development, consultants, when in terms of management and higher level execution. So now they have the need, and they always need consultants as a external perspective, as a third party who can consult them, who can lead them, who can guide them. Technology-wise, AI creation has just helped us as a consultant, because we are dealing with data, we are collecting data, we are analyzing unorganized data and make it something special, something focused and strategic for business decision making. So AI is a good tool, and currently I found out that many consulting companies are acquiring AI-based tech startups in order to, in future, to be able to analyze much more data. Why? Because in future consultants are going to be consult businesses to deal with big data. Data becomes bigger, and we need to understand how to deal with it. A future businessman has to just understand what direction, what strategy he needs to handle, and go ahead. But there is too much data to analyze. And AI comes, and tech solutions, digital solutions come to help in this sphere, in these aspects. I think tech solutions for consultants will be just another push. They will push startups, businessmen, executives, managers to go ahead to use consulting services much more in future, in 2032, especially.
Thanks very much, Siranuysh. Sam and Mahdi, I know that you guys are the focus on innovation and digital, and I didn't mean to kind of take a shot about, you know, the tech and the data taking things over, but how do you see yourselves kind of partnering with it, and how do you see yourselves, I suppose, you know, mentoring kind of future generations of consultants to not see the technology and the data as something that's encroaching on our space as consultants, but something that's maybe empowering us as consultants?
Maybe I'll start first by saying that, you know, I agree that technology is a big buzzword, because, you know, I spoke to my brother who's doing a PhD in Southern France, and, you know, when I always talk about AI and all, I say these are technologies in the 1970s. They have been around, they have been there, it's just that it's not been commercialized. So technology will always be ever-changing, different technology. You know, one of the key things to take note of is, say, for example, in banking. In the past, when you used to do financial models of valuation, use paper and pen, now we are all used to using Excel. So that is a kind of change, and you will expect, you know, similar changes 20 years down the road as well, where every single, you know, consultant or analyst will probably be used to using, you know, big data tools like, you know, Tableau, or even Power BI. So I think the first step is, you know, for us, especially down the road, is a mindset shift, accepting it. I think that's the main thing, accepting that technology, that's a partnership that we need to look into. And we need to partner with not just tools, but also partner with people who are expertise in the various tools. You can't expect everyone to know every single tool per se. So the greater need for teamwork, greater need for partnership across the board. And, you know, every one of them will have mastery of different tools. But I think as consultants, you need to know what are these tools used for? So say, for example, you can't use a hammer to take out a screw from, a board itself. So you need to know that at least you need to use a screwdriver for the screw. And that's what I think as consultants you need to do. But one thing for sure as consultants, you can never take away the human touch, in my opinion. So there's no way that technology, in my opinion, will replace. It will supplement, it will enable, but it will never replace that relationship, because consulting is all about trust, right? You are looking for someone to give you a view of things, someone to help you structure your thoughts, someone to help you facilitate. So the human trust element becomes important. Unless a point whereby you have robots walking around, I'm not sure whether that will happen with that, but for now itself, I think the element of trust is still important, and hence that is where the partnership happens. You are the mastery of tools, you know how to use the tools, or at least you know the use case of tools, but it's the trust that allows your clients to know that you know which tool to use and not using the wrong tools at the end of the day. And I see that's where the partnership will be with technology. Let's see where our partnership with clients will be moving ahead.
Thanks for that, Sam. And that kind of reminds me of a quote from Henry Ford. I think he kind of famously said, if he'd asked people what they wanted, they would have asked for faster horses. And I suppose when you think of innovation, and you think of the trust that you need to build with people, there is a huge amount that we have to take from our consumer base with regards to what it is that they want and need. And if you were to funnel that into a piece of technology, they would spit out a faster horse. They wouldn't necessarily spit out the innovation, and that's where that people spark comes from. Mahdi, I wanted to get your insights, because I think you also work do you also work with startup organizations? And I thought it was interesting when Christina said that, that relationship with the startups is something that's going to be really important, because when I think back to academia and studying, all of my case studies and things like that I would have done would have been around, the strategic development or strategic transformation at Philips, for example, or at, some of these big multinational companies. But there doesn't seem to be as much of a focus on how you apply those same tools in the startup space, in the new kind of the new entry into the market space. And I think what we've seen so far in the trends is that when we think of our customer base in 2032, it's going to be filled with far more smaller, newer organizations than it is multinational organizations. And there's probably, for us as consultants, more money to be made in that smaller space, helping those smaller organizations have a greater impact. And that's what it's going to be measured in, is impact, not headcount within your organization.
If I want to contribute to what Sam said, I want to say that in consulting, we are talking about three parts: finding out what is our company problem or the client company problem, and finding the best solution according to data or what we find out in the interviews, and then implementing the solution in the organization. And in those steps, we can use the machines, the AI, and the new technologies, APIs from those companies who provide for us. And in every step, we need a decision maker, a person who is in charge to find out, is it correct? Is the machine find the best solution for me? Is this data is suitable for my decision? And I think what consulting firms want to do in this problem is that you want to get familiar with all the machines, with all the platforms that can handle you in finding the problems or preparing a good solution for the problems. And but when the managers want to ask you, is it the correct solution? Is it the right solution for my problem? You need to contribute and have some sophisticated and well-educated managers beside you. And this is what I think in no matter how many years from now, 10 years, 20 years, or 100 years, we need human, we need trust, we need some people who would give us some advice from their experience, from their knowledge, from this expertise. And the other thing that I want to share with you is that in Iran and in every country, there are several startup studios, accelerators, and every single company that work on promoting startups, giving them hands, and providing a good situation for development. And big companies can provide a list for us that there are many problems that they look after solution, innovative and cheap solution, which the R&D center in big companies cannot afford it. So they look after the startups which have a feasible idea, business model, and a prototype to utilize in the big company. I think consulting firms can play a significant connector role in this position, and they can provide a good network of solutions and problems and connect them together. And using technology can help them to find out what is the trend, what is the main problems of organization, and advise startups and give them some hints about the future, about the industrial needs, and maybe the venture capital companies or investors to absorb a startup who is involved in these technologies to have a better future, to have a better revenue at the end of the year. So I think beside all the advisory and consulting role of our industry, it can be significant that in near future it's necessary to have a network hub role to connect solutions to problems. I think it can be good answer.
Thanks very much for that, Mahdi. And you mentioned something about, and it's a kind of a common theme that's come out in a number of the comments that have been made around, consultants as problem solvers, and consultants will always be solving some sort of a problem on behalf of their client. And there's a little bit that we need to look at trying to start to forecast. I know none of us have a crystal ball that we can look into to see what the future is going to hold in terms of what problems are going to have. If that was the case, I would say we all would have seen COVID coming. We all would have seen global warming coming, but we didn't see it, and we didn't see the impact that it was going to have. But when we think about the problems that organizations are going to have, sometimes they're very much so around, the bottom line and increasing your revenues and how can I increase my revenues? But what value do you think, and this is for everybody on the panel, what value do you think beyond the bottom line are we going to need to be able to help to advise our clients on? Because, Christina, I look to you because I know that when we think of venture capitalists, when we think of investment, there's this huge focus now on ESG and how organizations are going to meet specific targets, how, Siranuysh, to your point, how the clients of tomorrow are going to respond to organizations that either do or don't have kind of a focus on ESG, and how do we help our clients now, and how do we advise our clients on the value that they need to bring to the market that goes beyond their bottom line, their financial gains?
Yeah, so from my side, you are right. We don't have a crystal ball. We all wish we did, but we don't. I think the closer we can get to tomorrow's business models, the more able we will be to forecast what our clients' needs will be. Because with new emerging models, industries are changing. Standards are changing. Newer companies are more prone to, implement ESG considerations from the start. Just because if they have the right guidance from either consultants such as ourselves, or either from a party that's taken equity into their capital, say accelerators or other funds. Those companies are changing the way work is being done, and it's not just about bottom line, it's about work changing industries and disrupting industries in a way that changes our entire viewpoint, not just how how can we reduce cost just as a focus. And so being entrenched into those spaces will help us foresee possibly some major industry shifts, and therefore we can use that knowledge to either help larger clients that are operating in traditional industries, because as their industry is being shifted by those new players, they will need to react, and this sooner or later, and hopefully sooner with our help, can be addressed rather than later. And so the other side is also creating long-lasting relationships with smaller companies, because some of these companies become huge 1,000 employee organizations in a matter of few years. And so by being by their side, either via mentorship or providing some very crucial minor services to them in their beginning steps, can empower us to work for clients that are disrupting entire markets.
Thanks for that, Christina. Sam, when I suppose, and maybe it's me, but when I think of technology, I think of, it's going to make it faster, which means the organization is going to be able to make more money. But when we think of that value beyond the financial returns, how does technology play a role there to empower the consultants to help to provide deeper sectoral or broader industry-wide of advice, but also then return something that has social return on investment for organizations versus financial returns?
Got it. Yeah, and I would say that one thing, no doubt about it, I think bottom line is still important, though it's not the only factor left. So nowadays with technology, you're right that things will get a lot faster, and that probably give a little bit more bandwidth. You look at other stuff. You look at the whole hierarchy of needs. In the past, you're talking about bottom line as a survival means. So therefore, a lot of focus on bottom line, a lot of focus is just purely to make things work. But I think what happens is that with that capacity release, because of technology coming in to relieve those capacity per se, you are actually allowing yourself to be able to look at a lot more. And I think the other factor to come into picture is awareness. In the past, the awareness is not so strong. There will be a very small group of activists around. But I think with the whole new generation concept that comes in the picture, social impact, you get more visibility on the implications of some of this. And truth to be told, let's be practical about it as well, is, at some point there will be policies that's going to result in you having, it's going to hurt you on the bottom line if you don't take the social, implication into factor as well. So I think those are some of the key things that comes to the picture. Just to give you an example around that, while there are social implications of your electric car like Tesla and all, the truth to be told is that there are also policies in place, such as carbon credit and all, that they probably earn most of their profits coming from there. So there are also a shift in policies because of the awareness, because partially it's because what the general public is looking at, and that is probably an angle to really consider about. So therefore, I think what bottom line is still important, in my opinion. There will always be a shift towards more capacity to do more. That's one. And of course, more importantly is eventually some form of policies will come back and bite on them, and that will affect bottom line, and hence the social implication and the values from other areas becomes important as well.
Yeah, and Sam, I do appreciate, obviously the bottom line is always going to be important, and even as we see some kind of policies and mandates being put in place for certain organizations to be able to report on ESG elements, it still has a direct link to their bottom line, because the penalty for not doing it are financial fines. So there's still kind of this give and this take. But Mahdi, when you think of the types of organizations that that you're working with, are you also seeing that kind of focus on, I suppose, ESG kind of moving into the conversation, and is there a balance between wanting to report or wanting to be aligned with the ESG policies that are becoming kind of more trendy, kind of becoming more prominent in different industries? Is it balanced against kind of the financial bottom line type focus, or is one kind of winning out over the other?
Actually, I believe ESG is heavier here, but even in next year become heavier and heavier, since when we talk about financial success, we see that at the end of the day, we want to be rich, we want to handle our business as well as possible. But when we talk about ESG and the concerns in people, organization, policymakers, this is not about revenue. This is about living. This is about being able to have a better future, have a future, not only having a profitable company, have a living company. For instance, if we didn't care about global warming, we cannot afford a lot of industries or even living in this planet. So I believe next generation are more familiar with this kind of object, this kind of issues, and they will ask us to contribute more as a consulting firm, and as a big industry should concern more. So I believe this balance between financial situation and ESG will tend to move to ESG more and more until maintaining a balance and maintaining it, being able to solve those problems forever. For instance, we can afford some kind of machines or vehicles for all the worlds which are environmental friendly or clean energy. This is the way we can get rid of ESG, or just in global warming issue. There are various issues that we are struggling with them. So I believe with the development of next generation, we will have more concern about ESG.
Thanks very much for that, Mahdi. Siranuysh, I don't know if your mic is working now.
It's okay.
Perfect. Yes, thank you. Maybe just to remind you of the question, I suppose it's just to take an understanding of how when we consider our roles as consultants and advising on the implications of ESG and the importance of being able to report on your environmental, social and sustainability and governance kind of outcomes and KPIs, how do you think that's going to impact not only the type of customers that our clients are going to be attracting, but then also the workforce that they're going to be attracting? And do you think it's going to be a factor that, all of a sudden people are no longer going to want to work for, work with, or buy from organizations that can't report positively in these and under these headings?
I think the generation transformation and global transformation of economic development comes to the not just technology, security, but the scarcity of resources, climate change issues, and the businesses are transforming to this as well. And this is going to impact not just business sphere, but also the social. It will have its social impact. It will affect all aspects of our life. Anything comes to this aspects, and I think for business consultancy in future, it's gonna be another additional challenge to handle and to consider during strategizing it, and it's gonna be interesting and additional value-added issue. After all, we're going to come to the new generation of customers, new generation with its new mindset, and generation of consumers. Consumption is currently already transforming to generation and to generation of novelty, news, and they're trying to have something new. They just the price. If before COVID, the priority was pricing, we could consider pricing as a priority when making decision on buying or not something. Now, after COVID, during COVID and pandemic, and now and in future, generation N will gonna affect decision by more resiliency. Branding is gonna be much more trustworthy. Need to target trustworthiness and its technological base, its innovation, and the need of consultancy will transform to digital transformation experts, industrial innovators, and this is going to make its impact through the social and environmental and all SDGs we're going to need to consider. That current customers, the current consumption has become very effective. Their habits have been changed. We don't have the consumer we used to have before 2020. Now we have a consumer that appreciates your resilience, your brand resilience. Branding in general, marketing has affected all aspects of our life, all aspects of businesses. Marketing has involved in HR marketing. Now Web Summit in Portugal is in process, and when we go through the lectures, we understand that the KPIs, the KPIs of businesses are linked directly to the social, ecological, environmental, any ESG we need to SDG we need to consider during our consultancy. I think for this all comes to humanity, all comes to first we planning our canvas is consumer, with our customer, with our consumer. Our consumer is not just now and in future is not be the same as before pandemic. Our consumer will be the person who appreciates his life, whose value chain has been changed during pandemic, who values his life and what will affect better life for him. So I think this also is positive for us as a consultant to understand that in terms of understanding the value of life, people, our customers understand how important it is to take care of health, take care of ecology, take care of, not consider this as just theoretical aspects or KPIs that businesses have, but it's something that is directly affecting their lives.
Thanks very much for that, Siranuysh. And while you were talking, it reminded me of a couple of weeks ago being at the grocery store with my son, who's 10, and we needed peanut butter, so it's kind of go down to the peanut butter aisle and get peanut butter for me, John. And he goes down the aisle and he spent, I'd say, the guts of 7 or 8 minutes looking at the backs of all of the peanut butter jars. And he finally found a jar of peanut butter. It was €7, which was kind of alarming. And I said, why are you picking this peanut butter? Why didn't you get the peanut butter that we normally get? And his response kind of floored me for a 10-year-old. And it was because this is certified as not being using palm oil. And that was his reason behind wanting to choose this peanut butter over another peanut butter. So it's going to be important, I think, as well for us as consultants to really understand who's influencing the consumer, who's actually influencing the person that is opening up their purse to pay for this next item or this next service, because it goes beyond just what people are seeing on television. It goes beyond what people are seeing in newspapers, for those of us that still read newspapers or online newspapers or whatever it might be. And all of a sudden it becomes this generation that doesn't actually have buying power, but is influencing the buying power of the future. And I think they're going to become a really strong aspect of our consumer base that we need to help our clients understand that little bit further. And we need to realize that consumer base, although the person holding the checkbook as such, or the credit card or whatever, is maybe in their 40s or 50s or 60s, they're being influenced by somebody that's significantly younger, and again has zero buying power of their own, but is managing to wield a huge power over the people that do have the buying power in the future. So it's a really important dynamic maybe to understand, as well as we move into the next decade and the decades to come. What I'd like to now just kind of maybe ask each one of our panelists, because I want to make sure that we have some time to hopefully get some interaction from the rest of the people on the call. But if we think back to what we all mentioned at the very beginning as to our go-to items in our toolkit as consultants, and I love design thinking. I love a good ideation session with a group of clients, or just a group of people that are coming together to try to solve some sort of a problem. And then we think of, okay, we have people that are in high school right now that are going to be, junior to mid-level consultants in 10 years' time, because they're going to be in their late 20s and their early 30s. They're going to be making a mark in consultancy. If you were to teach a module to that group of people, that those 18-year-olds that are now, those people that are going to be in college in 5 years' time and in the industry 5 years after that, what module would you design for them? What would you hope they would be able to take from that module to help them become a more well-rounded and comprehensive consultant that we're going to need in 2032? And I'll start with Christina.
So rather than teaching, I would like to maybe create a sort of initiative, more hands-on experience for, let's say, a duration of 3 to 4 months, depending on the master program I'm working with, right? Maybe make an entire class, seek out each few or in groups, let's say, starting companies in their area, and just sit with them and try to identify their capacities, their goals, what resources they're working with, and how to move forward. And because it's kind of a blank canvas, it's a potential client that hasn't come to you with their needs, but you need to identify their needs. And that's true for most companies that exist today. Most companies do need some guidance in one way or another. And so by sitting with a new company, being yourself a freshly new management consultant that hasn't had much experience, you can really gauge what that process looks like and have a positive experience and possibly a positive impact on a young company, right? And you can even maybe have contact with them in the coming years and be able to provide value for that company in a long-term basis.
Thanks for that, Christina. Mahdi, I might go to you next. Just if you were to teach something to the incoming class of consultants, what would you think would be an important module that they had understood before they went into the industry?
Actually, before someone become a manager, it should become a consultant. It should be a manager, and I think good listener and good observers can be a good ability and a skill for a consultant. And after that coaching, in meeting with board members, we want to convince them, we want to satisfy them. if you find out what is the main concern, and we can find out our decision or solution in their mind without mentioning it. So I believe learning coaching can be practical for them as a soft skill, and as a harder skill, I think programming or using data econometrics can be so helpful for them, since we all know that next generation is generation of big data, even in a way that we cannot imagine. So I believe these two skills can be crucial for them.
Thanks for that, Mahdi. Sam, I'll go to you next.
Well, one of the key things that I probably would want to put in as a module is the growing trend of digital nomads. So cross-cultural communication is probably one of the modules that I want to put inside, because you'll be working with everyone from different parts of the world. Collaboration and all becomes very important. So by knowing the culture on different fronts becomes very important. That is one module that I will put into the masters.
Thanks for that, Sam. Siranuysh?
Yes, I would suggest 3 main skills to develop for them. First, management skills, to understand to understand the business, to have the big picture, to develop the skills of understanding this big picture. The second is data analysis, data science, to be able to deal with this kind of data. And the third and the most important skill I would suggest is mindfulness and meditation, to be able to keep the life and work balance, analyzing all these data and working with different types of people. So I think these are the main directions current consultancy has to adopt to.
Thanks very much for that, Siranuysh, and everybody. It's interesting that data came in so often there, because when we think of the biggest companies from 30 and 40 years ago, they usually developed, or they made something tangible. Well, now when we think of the biggest companies out there, a lot of them don't actually sell us anything. We think of the likes of Google, and we think of the analytics that go behind every single website that we visit. We are not actually buying anything from them, but they are managing to, hopefully quite ethically gather data on our habits, on our usage, on our interests, and understanding and harnessing that data is kind of the superpower maybe of the future organizations. It was interesting as well to bring in kind of notions about culture, because I think one of the things that COVID did bring us is it took down barriers. So we were already at an age where the barriers for business and collaboration were quite low in terms of going from country to country. But those barriers became almost non-existent when we were all working from our homes in our fuzzy slippers and a nice shirt on the top. So it's interesting to maybe to see and hopefully that we don't find ourselves in a position in 10 years time where those barriers are starting to build themselves back up. I'm really keen on Siranuysh, the notion of mindfulness, because for me, because we have so many distractions coming around us, and our businesses that we're working with have so many distractions. It's kind of what's going on in this economy versus that economy. What is Greta Thunberg saying about this organization or that organization? What is the UN kind of dictating about the SDGs, or how are they going to evolve over the next few years? There's so much noise out there, and I think it's going to become more and more difficult for organizations to really kind of hone in and define their focus when they have so many inputs kind of being thrown in their direction. So mindfulness is definitely a key thing there. Christina, your point I want to come to last before we finish up, but the hands-on experience piece. One thing, and I actually happened to do a master's specifically in management consultancy, and I did it about 10 years into my career as a consultant. So I was able to kind of do it and retrospectively look back on my career, understand why certain things that I was doing 10 years previous in my career completely fell flat in their face. But it was also really interesting to understand kind of exactly how the industry evolved, but to get I suppose, a view of the hands-on experience. So my consultancy master's was actually almost 50% hands-on. We were working with organizations. We were working with big and small organizations, which I thought was really interesting. So I would definitely think that as that type of academic focus continues to evolve, you're going to see more and more hands-on practical learning in comparison to maybe kind of standard kind of textbook learning. And hopefully we'll be able to influence those textbooks to include more on, startups and that industry and how we consult with them as well. So I'd like to stop there. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for all of your insights, for Gergana for inviting us in to have this conversation. I found it really interesting. I've gotten quite a lot of energy from this. And I'd like now, hopefully, to open up the floor for people to come off mute or comment in the chat any additional questions or insights that they have that they'd like to add to this conversation.
With regard to your question, what you should teach the new generation of entrepreneurs or business leaders, I believe one of the biggest problems is sifting through the vast amounts of data that's available on the internet. You've done your master's, so you know what I'm talking about, and most of the consultants will. But a lot of the entrepreneurs fall for the 10 things to do kind of information on the internet, which is not research-based. And I think that's one thing that we can teach the new entrepreneurs is to validate information they get from the internet, or how to find research-based information if they want to make business decisions.
That's a really great point, and it's one of the caveats to our reliance on data, and also the importance on data, that as important as data is, the integrity of that data is equally, if not more important than to the volume of data that we have at our fingertips. So and when you look at I suppose the different dimensions of consultancy, you're starting to see a rise in research consultancy and the data analytics piece as well. So it's definitely something that's going to come through. I don't see that as a particularly easy job to have, and how we actually validate what we see online in comparison to what the actual information or the actual research is sharing. But it's a very well spotted point.
I wonder if I might ask a question of the panelists.
Yep.
I'm the national president in Australia, and one of the problems that a lot of businesses are facing right now is a deluge of hacking of some very large companies' databases. And you've spent a lot of time tonight talking about those, getting data, analysing data, keeping data. And you've also talked about ESG. So one of the critical things of ESG, and particularly governance around data gathering, as we go out there with and working with clients and grabbing a hold of data. And there are two elements to this. One is the data that the client holds, but there's also the data that you and I, as the consultant, hold of the client's data. And the ESG implications for all of this are going to be very significant. I'd be interested in the comments of the panelists on this matter.
Who wants to jump in there first?
I think maybe let me just take it a little bit on that front. Peter, thanks for that. And I agree that data is everywhere, but that also means the data has to be protected in one way or the other. And maybe a comment that I have generally for data is inevitable. Nowadays every data is collected from different sources. So, I would say that on first level of it is the awareness that what is the data being used, who is using the data. I think those are the preliminary steps that a lot of them are looking. But for most of the other countries, especially in Europe, I believe most of my European peers will probably, kind of jump over here. I think there are more and more guidelines and regulations in place that causes us to make sure that the data is put into good use. And also, I think the other big thing that is happening a lot is that there's also a growing trend of a particular line that's even more lucrative from a consulting standpoint, and that is how to counter the hacking. White hat hacking, people going in to make sure that they are able to ensure that the data is as protected as possible. But that said, let's face it this way. No matter how protected you are, there will always, you can be one person protecting it, but you have 1,000 people trying to hack it down. So there will always never be a foolproof way of doing it. But that said, it's always the advancements of things. In the past, we are worried about other items. Now we are probably worried about data being collected. I think it's all about being preemptive on that front, but I would say that it's never been a perfect, measure to prevent that. But data is still what it is. It's just many or little. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, is that we must be aware that what are the preemptive measures and taking advanced steps around it to stay on top of the trend. So that is just my view on that front.
Thanks for that, Sam. And it's just made me think as well that when we think about the security risks of 20 years ago versus the security risks of now. Before we were handling those risks by locking our doors, by potentially bars on windows, by password protecting things. Now there's different layers of encryptions and things like that people are looking at. But one thing that we also, and it may be something that we didn't foresee in the industry and around kind of data privacy, was the people power for protecting their data. People are now actively choosing not to share their data with these big data houses. We all get that option, when we click into a website initially as to, do we want the cookies or do we not want the cookies? And that's something that I think maybe we didn't anticipate, that there would ever be a scenario where people would have the choice to say, no, you can't actually collect this data on me. And I think that's one of the ways that we're going to protect individual data, but it's also going to be how we try to protect the data that we house on behalf of our clients. I know that there's been quite a lot on, the news is littered with cybersecurity breaches most weeks anyway, but I know that it's something that it's a growing kind of issue, and you see an awful lot of organizations not housing data on behalf of their clients. So, we're no longer finding a situation where the external consultants are the ones owning the outputs. The outputs are very much so created on the client servers rather than on the service provider servers, for that very reason, so that you're reducing down, I suppose, the risk to the consultants as well. It's not just a risk to the client. The consultant's reputation becomes tarnished with that single data breach that could potentially harm a whole host of clients that they've had. And it's something that I think we're going to see happening more and more. And for both the data breaches and also the ways in which people are, the innovation that people are coming up with to protect the data, and the different types of governance that are in place to ensure that data is housed at the point of collection versus, by third parties.
I would like to add something regarding tech perspective. AI is exact when it has enough data. If we want to develop AI sphere, we need to gather much data. But I agree that the security reasons, for cybersecurity reasons, it needs to be protected properly. But but this kind of big data, we need to develop AI sphere. Let's understand from other side as well. We need to be secure but smart. We need to share our information, our contact information, our personal and information from CRM and other solutions. But we need to be smart in this kind of aspects.
I want to share something. I think now and in near future, this problem can be met by APIs. There are some companies that store data, store the third parties' data, and if you want to do a research or do an analytic on their data. They give you a single API to use data to do your analysis without having access to finding out what is the data and finding out what every single customer data is. So with this way, with this method, the problem of the company or client will be solved, and the data will be protected. And I think with the development of blockchain and these technologies, even it become more secure and trustable. But if you want to have a big picture, as long as we use the internet, we don't have anything private, in my opinion. So it's kind of dual ladder. It's kind of have two sides, one negative side and one positive side. The negative side says that nothing is private, and the positive side is that there are some policies and some new technologies that can protect our personal data or client data, and that's it.
Thanks very much, Mahdi, Siranuysh, and Sam, for those insights. Do we have any other questions?
Lydia, go.
Lydia would like to.
Okay.
Right. Well, thank you so much for all your sharing from different parts of the world, from different continents. Thank you very much. Well, as we all know, technology has changed the map. In a world of hypermedia, how can we be more effective in managing cross-cultural virtual teams? One. And how can we be more effective in leading people in a hybrid environment, hybrid working pattern in your teams, running effective hybrid meetings, as well as leading people in the hybrid world?
Lydia, that might be the $1 million question. I don't mind kicking off, maybe just to begin with, because I'm a huge champion of the hybrid way of working, and I got huge value out of the transition of moving to hybrid working. And I even moved jobs and joined a new team completely virtually. And I met my team 18 months in person after working with them. So I have deep experience with this over the last number of years. But I know that one of the key things in terms of teaming people virtually and getting really valuable outputs from conversations that happen virtually versus in person is to make sure that it's not all business. We can, if you consider, if you think about a workshop that you would have in person, there's a bit of coffee and tea beforehand, and people are chitting and chatting, and it seems a little bit kind of awkward to try to recreate that in a hybrid environment, but it's actually a really important piece to ensure that the actual work that you're going in to do for the actual purpose of the session, the meeting or workshop or whatever, can be richer. It can be deeper, because you're not bringing a bunch of strangers together and telling them, right, let's solve a problem, let's learn something together. You're bringing people that have had maybe only, a 3 or 4 minute engagement with each other, but all of a sudden, I know that Christina and I have this thing in common. So when she brings up a particular comment or a particular topic, I feel far more confident in supporting her and adding additional value to that. I know that Sam and I have differing views on something else, and I know that we can kind of have our challenge with each other in this particular way, so that it remains respectful. And again, it breaks down a barrier kind of completely. The screens that are up in front of us all at the minute are a barrier to us being able to collaborate and communicate with each other. But I think that when you have even the prep sessions that we've had, over the last week with the panelists, they were quite brief, but it meant that, I really have an understanding of all the different panelists, where our interests and passions lie, how kind of we bring a diverse kind of voice about consultancy together. And I think it's added a huge amount of value to this conversation as a result, because we've been able to kind of break down that barrier a little bit. But please, Sam, Siranuysh, Mahdi, Christina, your inputs would be great here as well.
Recently, I found out that there are bots for onboarding. I think it's an interesting solution. We need to keep technology inside our culture, environment, internal environment, business environment, but we need to keep some small part to humanity. And a hybrid solution is the best solution for this. Sometimes we need to meet, even in some country, in some neutral country, but we need to meet, and in order to understand the mindset. We don't understand the mindset via technologies. We understand mindset, the personal, how the person feels like something, feels like life in general, just by meeting and just at least drinking some tea with them. And I think the hybrid solution is the perfect solution for any business, but it needs to integrate some technologies, keeping humanity in mind.
Thanks, Siranuysh.
I believe that if we can maintain some face-to-face meeting during all the hybrid working, virtual working, can be so effective. I had an experience 2 years ago. We started publishing international paper with people which we didn't know each other in same country, in same city before, and we didn't see each other even after submitting the paper, but we work together as a team. After that, when it comes to answering all the revisions and all the comments of editors of the paper, we decide to maintain the meetings physically. We see each other face to face and talk with each other. Then we find out that there is a more synergy and energy when we talk in person and hearing each other's sound without a laptop in front of us. So I think if companies have to maintain hybrid work environment or cross country work team, they should consider some real meeting for people, for the team, to have a better understanding, knowing each other better, and boosting their energy to work better.
Yeah, I guess physical connection in some way is key. We've seen this, all of the panelists, and I feel most of the participants can agree. But it's very exciting to see what VR and AR have in store for us, and see if maybe cross-continental relationships can be bridged via the metaverse in 2032, possibly, right?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how the whole metaverse, the AR, VR thing coming along. You can just teleport yourself to a new area and meet everyone. Just sharing my experience around that. I kind of grew my firm from 6 to 45 over the COVID period across 4 countries. And to be blunt about it, a lot of times we agree that working virtually is going to be a lot more productive, because whenever you're on virtual, you become very task-oriented. You get things done, you get things very productively done on that front. We kind of created what I call a virtual office. Essentially, it's going on Zoom and put breakout rooms along the way, trying to recreate the office environment. To be blunt about it, that still helps productivity, but that doesn't help team bonding. So I agree that having a neutral ground somewhere, which is effectively what we did after the whole COVID blew over, bring everyone together. Not talking about work like what Cassandra said, just anything but work, bring everyone a neutral ground is going to be very helpful, because people come to work, especially in the newer generation, not for work per se. They are looking at it as a work-life integration. They're looking at it from a social standpoint, and that's what brings people to a certain workplace itself. So I think that physical element, that neutral ground, that social aspect is important. But of course, the good thing, obviously, is that nowadays you can connect with people without being physically there. So like for me, I do a lot of M&A work. In the past, you have never thought that you will do M&A online across 3 countries without traveling. But nowadays, you can do it easily and just jump on a Zoom call to negotiate. So that is how the world have changed. But I think this whole thing is going to stay, but it doesn't take away from the fact that the airlines will still have a business to go, because we still need to bring everyone together at some point. But just maybe not in office, but somewhere else.
Thanks very much, everybody, for those inputs. And it kind of reminds us again about those barriers that got to be kind of broken or reduced as a result of, or the introduction and the growth of the hybrid way of working. Were those mergers possible if you hadn't spent a huge amount of money traveling around the world to make them happen? Possibly not. You managed to get them done financially more efficiently, from a time perspective more efficiently. This group of people were able to come together without a huge impact to the environment of flying around the world to come together in a single space to meet. It certainly doesn't take from the energy that we get from human interaction, and that's something that is naturally built into our DNA as people. But there's certainly a balance maybe to strike there. Gergana, I'm just taking a look at the time, and I don't know if you have any final words to close us out before we give everybody back to their mornings, afternoons, and evenings, depending on where they are.
Sandra and the whole all panelists, thank you very much for the discussion we just had. It was very interesting to see how you have blended the data questions, everything around security, processing, understanding data, and the soft part of the humanity. So often you've mentioned culture, humanity, and you brought also new topics around the consumer behavior, which I don't think we have discussed that often. What would how consumer behavior will change, and how our clients will change in the future, their needs. I mean, lots of, I would say, interesting topics, which I hope we would continue to discuss in the future. And I also want to help everyone who joined the call today, trusting and believing that together with the younger part of the consulting community, we would be able to co-create our future and bring it to a level which we all would like to see it. So thank you, everyone, for the discussions today, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Thanks, everyone.